A car company just built an engine so efficient that Guinness World Records had to fly a team in just to confirm the number was real. That's not a typo. That's not a concept car sitting behind velvet rope at some futuristic expo never meant to reach an actual customer. This is a real engine in a real car already rolling off a production line that you could realistically drive across half a country on one tank of gas. And here's the detail: the company that did it isn't Toyota. It isn't Honda. It isn't Ford. It isn't GM. It isn't anyone based in Detroit or Tokyo or Stuttgart. It's a Chinese company called Geely. If this is the kind of story you're into, hit like and subscribe now, because we're about to get into exactly how a Chinese automaker just quietly out-engineered the entire Western and Japanese auto industry, and the man who built it started with $3,000 and a factory that made refrigerator parts. The average new car in America gets somewhere around 30 miles per gallon. The Toyota Prius, the car that basically invented the words fuel efficient for most people, gets about 57 in the city. That number has sat near the top of the mountain for almost 20 years. Nobody built anything that seriously threatened it. Until a Chinese engineering team put a production car through independent testing and walked away with a number that sounds like a typo. Over 100 miles per gallon. Verified. On a track. In a car anyone can walk into a dealership and buy. And the engine behind it, but you won't believe what it actually means until you understand who's behind it. And this story starts, of all places, in a farming village in China. In 1963, in a small village in Zhejiang province, a boy named Li Shufu was born. Nobody around him was thinking about engines. They were thinking about crops, about getting through the season. In 1986, at 23 years old, Li borrowed roughly $3,000 from his family and opened a tiny workshop. Not cars, not even motorcycles yet, refrigerator parts. Small, boring, unglamorous metal components that nobody would ever put in a documentary. But he didn't stay there. By the mid-90s, he'd moved into motorcycles. And then, in 1997, he said something out loud that made grown men in the industry laugh in his face. He said he was going to build cars. He had no background in automotive engineering, no factory built for it, no investors lined up, no connections, nothing. When a reporter pushed him on how hard building a car actually is, he reportedly just shrugged and said, "A car is basically 4 wheels and 2 sofas bolted together." People didn't just doubt him, they mocked him publicly in print. He kept going anyway. In 2001, his company, Geely, became the first privately owned Chinese company ever licensed to manufacture automobiles. Historic on its own. But he wasn't close to finished. Not even close. In 2007, he wrote a letter directly to Ford Motor Company, offering to buy Volvo. Ford didn't even bother responding. In 2008, he flew to the Detroit Auto Show and pitched it in person, face to face, in the heart of American car country. Ford turned him down again. Most people would have stopped there. He came back a third time in 2009, better prepared, better financed, more serious than the 2 attempts before it. And in 2010, the farmer's son from Zhejiang walked out of Ford's own headquarters with a signed deal worth $1.8 billion. Volvo, a European institution with decades of prestige, now belonged to a Chinese startup nobody outside the industry had heard of. The world did not see that coming. But he still wasn't done. In 2018, he quietly bought close to 10% of Daimler, the parent company of Mercedes-Benz, making him, personally, the single largest individual shareholder of one of the most prestigious car brands on the planet. Think about that for a second. A Chinese entrepreneur who started with refrigerator parts is now the biggest individual owner of a stake in Mercedes-Benz. Today, his group owns Volvo, Polestar, Lotus, and Lynk & Co. because it's exactly what produced the engine we're about to break down. But before we get to the engine itself, you need to understand the actual problem it's solving. Because right now, almost the entire public conversation about the future of cars has been flattened into one option: just go electric. And to be fair, electric cars are genuinely impressive pieces of engineering, but living with one every day is a lot messier than the commercials make it look. Fast charging, even at the best stations available today, usually still takes 20 to 40 minutes to get back to 80%. That's not a quick splash and go. That's sitting there long enough to eat a full meal every single time you need to top up on a road trip. Cold weather makes it worse. Below freezing, most EVs lose somewhere between 30 and 40% of their advertised range. So the 300-mile range you paid for on the sales sheet can quietly turn into 180 miles on a cold. When it finally needs replacing, the bill can land anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000, enough to erase years of fuel savings in one shop visit. And zoom out even further, those batteries need lithium, cobalt, and nickel, pulled out of the ground through large open-pit mining operations, some tied to serious, well-documented human rights concerns. On top of all of it, the power grid in most countries, including the US, was never built to handle tens of millions of vehicles charging at once. Upgrading it is a decades-long, multi-trillion-dollar project, not a next-year fix. None of this means electric cars are bad. A Chinese engineering team just made a gasoline engine so efficient the whole conversation stopped mattering. That's exactly the question Geely decided to answer. And in April 2026, at the Beijing Auto Show, they gave the answer. And it's bigger than almost anyone expected. They unveiled a system called IHEV, built around a new engine called the BHE-15. On paper, it sounds almost forgettable. A 1.5-liter four-cylinder engine, the kind of size you'd expect in a basic economy hatchback, not a headline. But the number attached to it was anything but forgettable. 48.4% thermal efficiency. Here's what that actually means in plain terms. Every engine wastes fuel. When gasoline burns, only part of that energy actually pushes the car forward. The rest just leaks away as heat and friction. The average American engine sits around 30 to 35%. Toyota's hybrid system, considered the gold standard for almost 2 decades, sits around 41%. That 41% has been the ceiling. Nobody in a mass-produced car had ever broken meaningfully past it. A Chinese engine just hit 48.4%. Guinness tested it, verified it, and put it in the record books. The highest thermal efficiency ever recorded in a production car engine. Period. Full stop. And here's the number that should genuinely stop you for a second. Formula One engines, the most expensive, most obsessively engineered combustion machines human beings have ever created, the ones teams spend hundreds of millions of dollars chasing fractions of a percent on, run at roughly 50% efficiency. A production engine, sitting in a car a regular family in Hangzhou or Shanghai can finance at a normal dealership, just landed within 2 points of Formula One technology. But a great number on a lab bench means nothing until it survives real roads. So Geely paired that engine with a 308 horsepower electric motor and an AI system that decides, moment to moment, exactly how much work the engine does versus the motor. They put the whole system into a Galaxy M8 sedan, drove it on a closed circuit in Hainan, China, and ran the standardized test. The result? Roughly 2.1 liters of fuel per 100 kilometers. In American terms, 106 miles per gallon. Independently verified. A second Guinness World Record from the same car in the same announcement.